Alright, hey, what's going on, Freedomers? Um, um, if someone's not on your frequency, they can't hear you. It's like and I don't know how scientific it is. I didn't do deeper research in that, but it's like, um, if you're on two different stations, or if, um, or if, or if you're on a higher pitch, and one's on a lower pitch, you can't hear each other. You're gonna have to compromise and be in the middle on a similar pitch or melody so you can understand each other. So when you're talking to somebody from a higher standpoint, either you're gonna have to dumb down what you're saying, or they're gonna have to heighten their understanding. If they're, and we'll get into this later, if they're willing. Because I heard a guy say it's not about ability, it's about willingness. So because everything is about willingness to do something, then because everybody has the ability per se, but that's not what it's about. If they're not willing, it doesn't matter how much ability they have. The willingness is gone. So you have three bodies. You have your thought, feelings, and or you could say even emotions, but really emotions are different than feelings. I'm not gonna get into that here, but because this is energy, emotions. You could feel whatever you want to feel, but this is just energy, emotion. Usually it's a positive or a negative. This is based on what you get through your senses, etc., etc. Before and after knowing and action. So thought, feeling, and action. So the action is what you're doing. Feeling or emotions, we can just go with feelings for now. What you feel at this moment, or your energetic body. This is a combination of things. This is just most likely in the now moment, and your thoughts are just what you constantly think about. So if these three things are not, like I said here, if these three things are not mirroring each other, or they're not mirroring each other, then they're gonna misunderstand each other. Now, also, if when you're not on somebody's frequency, right? It's like it's like one of the things that I used to do that I'm growing through myself is when somebody doesn't speak your native tongue. You can't get mad at them if their native tongue, like in other words, if my native tongue is English. So if I spoke to somebody where their native tongue is Japanese, I can't get mad at them or belittle them because we speak two different native tongues. It's either we're gonna either both have to come to understand each other's language, or I'm gonna have to learn how to co-mingle with this person, or vice versa. But there has to be, like I said, a willingness to do that. But I can't. When you're in two different frequencies, it's the same thing as saying we both speak two different native tongues. So if we speak two different native tongues, then I can't be upset at the fact that they don't understand me. I can't be upset at the fact that they're not interested in what I'm saying. I can't be upset at the fact that they ignore me, or they because if you're on two different if you speak two different native tongues, it'll look like they're ignoring you, but really they don't understand you. And some people don't have the courage to say I don't understand. Like my client just told me if you can't break it down, and this is the next point, if you can't break it down, if you can't understand or teach it in simply, you don't understand it enough, you don't understand it enough, right? So sometimes all we need to know is the simple stuff to communicate these two different languages, right? Let's say because we're both human, so food, water, shelter, getting around, um, getting around, uh, communicating with other sex, etc., etc. The basic human needs. So, if you can't break it down simply, you don't understand it enough. So, um, when you're speaking on a higher frequency than somebody else or a higher pitch, you can't be understand or a higher velocity of language. You can't be upset at the fact that you can't be overly emotional and think that they're ignoring you when most times they don't understand you or they're not willing to understand you, or they don't. Sometimes they don't. Again, they don't have the ability because you speak two different languages. Um, the different bodies give you different languages compared to in let's say in English or language, different parts of sentences, grammar, or speech. So that put the things together like mind, body, and spirit, like a subject. I forgot the other part of the sentence is called. The other part that makes the sentence: subject, the body, and the end, or the punctuation. So these are the parts of a sentence that make it a sentence. So if they don't understand these three things to connect these three parts, the subject, body, and the end, then they're gonna you're always gonna miscommunicate, not understand each other. When that person gets tired, they're gonna not listen because they don't understand what makes a sentence or what feeds certain basic levels of understanding. So don't get over frustrated yourself because they don't speak your language. If they're willing if they're willing to learn. Now, if they're not willing to learn, you have to respect yourself to leave them alone. It's okay to not be understood as long as you're integral. And if you're in your truth with your higher self, then that's okay. But if you're not in your higher self and you're just trying to force them to understand, or through your neediness for them to understand, when you know y'all speak two different languages. If y'all know y'all speak two different languages, it looks like, again, they're ignoring you. They don't really want to communicate, or sometimes they have a hidden agenda and they really do understand you. But we're not going to talk about that here. But let's say they really don't understand you, right? So if they really don't understand you and you're trying to force them to understand, it's really coming from a needy place. So you need to be able to have the courage to leave them alone because they don't understand you, period. So, but for if you want to book a session with astrology, learning your mission or your purpose, and your love life, go to bit.ly/astrology form. My fault. In all caps, to book your session. Peace.